Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Dev Marketer channel. We're continuing our series on how to build an advanced blog in CMS. Now what we're building in truth is the devmarketer.io website. Okay, so the website that I'll be using, you guys will be using, you guys will be visiting, and we're going to be making it into basically a blogging platform that we can post our videos, but we'll have so many other features, which is what we're going to talk about in this next kind of phase of developing the website. We'll talk about what those features are exactly, but the most important thing I want to talk about today is basically what is the discovery phase. And the discovery phase, in my opinion, is we talked about this in the previous video, so if you missed that, you may want to go back to that previous video. But in the first phase of web development, it's so important that you have this phase, which sometimes is called the creative phase. I've heard it called the ideation phase. I've heard it called different things. I think discovery is kind of the most common, and that's what I like to use because that's really what you're trying to do is discover what you want to do for this project, okay? And again, this doesn't matter. I think this phase is so important. So this is like the most important phase because it sets the direction and the momentum for your entire project, okay? And this is important regardless of whether you're building an app for yourself, you're building it you're a freelancer, you're building it for a client, or maybe you're part of a larger team and you're building this for a company you work for. Regardless of who you're building it for, this is so important. And so I highly recommend you take the time to go through this discovery phase. And really the goal of this is to hammer out everything that needs to be decided before you start designing, before you start coding. It's going to speed up all the future processes, so it's really important that you get everything on paper. This is everybody's chance to speak up and talk about what they want built into the application, what kind of features they're looking for, what they want the website to look like, just different things like that. This is everyone's chance to speak up. This is like a brainstorming session where everyone spits out their ideas and you just throw everything on paper. Now, the next step that we're going to take in at the end of the discovery phase is when you start really piecing it together. But early on, you just want to have a brainstorming session. You want to talk about what is everything that might be cool to have. Even if you don't, maybe you might cut it out later. It's important to kind of talk about what you're going to want right now, what might be kind of cool. Okay, so the best thing I can recommend is if you are a freelancer and you're doing this, I recommend working with the client and telling the client, hey, we need to do this discovery phase. I need to understand what you're looking for in a website so that I can see, first of all, that I'm the right fit for you. Second of all, make sure I can deliver and I can set the timelines appropriately to meet the goals that you want. And the only way to know that is to have this discovery phase. So you want to set a time where you can go, if it's a local client, I highly recommend you actually go physically to their offices and meet with them in person. If it's a remote client, you can do some sort of Skype or video chat. And tell the client to bring everyone that's going to be related into the project into the room. So this includes the maybe you don't want to bring in every sales guy, but the head of sales, head of marketing, obviously anyone in the digital team, the marketing team is going to be crucial. Anyone that's going to have involvement in the project, it's really good to bring them in and let them, speak up. Even people like customer service sometimes have a lot of requests on, hey, can we get these features built into the website? It would make our life as customer service so much easier. Okay, so I think it's really important that you don't just meet with whoever the head of the project is, which is, I think, it seems like most freelancers skip over this step entirely, or if they decide to do a discovery type of phase, they will only work with the head of the project. And I'm telling you that not only hurts the client that you're working for, but it hurts yourself as the freelancer down the road. What'll happen down the road, I promise you, what's going to happen is as you get to phase 3 where you're actually coding the website and you're getting to the end of the project, or maybe it's step 4 when you're in QA sometimes, where the head of the project at your client starts actually showing the project to other people now, to other the heads of other departments. And then these people will start speaking up and be like, wait, why can't we add this feature or this feature? It'd be really cool if we did this since we're rebuilding the website. And because they didn't get brought in until the very end of the project, a lot of times that stuff either gets rolled over and just never gets done, which makes them upset and doesn't really accomplish the needs of your client. Or the client will come back to you and say, oh, well, we decided we need all these other features. Can you go ahead and just do those, bake those in? And then you're stuck with the awkward conversation of saying, well, but I've got to go back and redo all this work. It messes up all the designs. It messes up some of the code base, the database structure. It's going to cost more money because it's going to have all this additional time I didn't account for. And it's just something you don't want to have to deal with. And so this discovery phase is so important to set the expectations for the project so you know what's coming up and you can plan accordingly. If you're in a company and you're doing this, it's equally important for the exact same reasons. Even if you're building the application in-house, you want to understand what everyone else wants out of the project. Sometimes if you're in, say, the development department, your goals of a website are very different than what customer service wants or what sales wants or what marketing wants. And so it's really good to bring everybody in, get everyone's ideas on the table so you can meet everyone's needs. Now, of course, you may have a discussion down the road saying, maybe sales wants to incorporate Salesforce into their website or something. And for whatever reason, that's not going to fit into your goals. That's okay. You can have that discussion up front and you can make that decision up front before you get down to phase 4 and you're ready to launch the website. And now you've got to have that discussion. And, now they think you're just pushing it off because you want to launch the website and you want to go home or something. It's much easier to have that conversation early on. And then again, if you're building a website yourself, even if you're the only person involved in the project, you want to get all of your ideas on so you don't have to go through and rebuild a website, reorganize databases and everything down the road. You want as much stuff so you can plan accordingly and you can set this up and you can have an appropriate timeline as well. You know how long everything's going to take because you know what's on the table, okay? And then the last thing I'll say about the discovery phase is, again, if you are a freelancer, you're working for someone, the discovery phase is super important for your pricing. A lot of times I'll tell people if they ask how much something will cost, I tell them always, well, I'll give you a ballpark number. It's something like this, but I really need to understand what you want, okay? Some people come out and they've got this crazy idea of something they might think is easy, but when I look at it as the developer, I'm like, well, that's gonna be like 40 or 50 extra hours of work that I wouldn't have planned on doing. And so you need to know what those features are because not all features are created equal. If someone just wants a little bit of dynamic content, that's easy to add in. But sometimes people need features that require me to build a back-end service that maybe wasn't expected or something like that. And so those need to be brought up front. And so I always tell them that I'm going to price at a fixed fee, a fixed hourly fee during the discovery phase. And I'll bill them usually on a bi-weekly basis. Every 2 weeks, I'll bill them forever how long the discovery process takes. But then we'll actually come together with a contract at the end of the discovery phase before we move into the design, phase 2, 3, 4, and 5. Before we move on, I usually have the contract then. So I'm basically working on just just an hourly basis as needed during the discovery phase. At the end of the discovery phase, I know all of their features, and that's when I write up a scope of work. And I think I'm going to talk about that not in this series. We'll do a different series for freelancers on that, but it's really important you have a scope of work so that you can say, this is what I'm promising to deliver. I'm promising to deliver these features, and you list out all the features exactly. You also release timelines when you're going to finish certain milestones, and you usually create your milestones, and you have all that written down. You also write out when you're expecting to get paid, what the installments are. Usually a large project, there'll be multiple installments. So you might have installments every 2 weeks. You might have monthly installments. It all depends on various different things. But you hash that out during the discovery phase. At the end of the discovery phase, that's when I always tell the client, this is it. Everything's locked in. I make sure they know any additional features beyond this are going to be cost extra. We've got to go back and readjust the scope of work, and you make it official. If you don't make it official, you're going to end up hurting yourself in the long run. Okay, so make that scope of work, make sure they get it signed, and make sure that's your contract going forward. It's got your pricing, your installment plans, like when they expect to get paid, what happens if they don't get paid. That's super important. I know a lot of people that just keep working, and if someone's not going to pay you, I promise you this, if you are having problems getting paid for your second installment, don't keep working, because if you're having problems getting paid for your second installment, why do you think that if you just keep working and now you bill them for a third installment and for the fourth installment and for the fifth installment, you think you're now they're in debt, 4 times as much as they were before, How do you think if they weren't paying their second installment that they're going to pay also their third, fourth, and fifth? You know what I mean? So it's really not worth it if you, I'll work for a little bit. If they're a little bit late, I'll keep working in good faith, depending on the relationship I have with the client. But you can't just keep working forever, because I promise you, if someone's not paying some of these early installments, then they're not going to pay you for the later ones, and you're just wasting your time. So it's just not worth it. And so it's important to have those time frames set into place. Since we're talking about payments, the last thing I'll say, since everyone always asks how payments work, I always do installments usually every 2 weeks or half a month, so twice a month is usually the way I do installments. And then I usually require the final payment before we deploy. Okay, so you get through all your different phases, and then when I'm actually sitting there clicking deploy, I will not click deploy until I get the final installment. And I promise you, that's what actually you'll get paid if it's that way. If you can wait and you say, hey, we're not actually deploying the website until we get that final installment, then you'll make sure you actually get paid for the project. And again, I'm upfront with all of that. It's always in the scope of work. When they sign that scope of work at the end of the discovery phase, before we move on to the design phase, it says in the scope of work that exact same thing. It's not a surprise to them. They know that upfront. And if someone has a problem with that, they'll bring it up in the discovery phase, which is another important thing. Before you wasted too much time, if they're not planning on paying you, or they know that there might be trouble paying you or something like that, they're going to bring that up in the discovery phase when you mention, oh, by the way, I don't actually deploy the site until I get the final installment. Then they're going to be like, oh, about that. And if they start hesitating about that, that's a big red flag. You need to move on. Because if someone's hesitating about that, I'm telling you, every time I've ignored my gut and I've moved forward, it's always bitten me in the butt. If someone hesitates about that feature, about not willing to pay until that final installment is completed, then they're not the right client for you. Any company would expect that. It wouldn't be too abnormal to have that. Okay, so the goal here of the discovery phase, as I mentioned, why we're doing the discovery phase is we want to get everything on the table. We want to meet with everyone involved in the project, and then we want to get all the ideas on the table. What does everyone expect out of this project? We want to start listing features. If there's designs and colors, let everyone have a voice. And the most important thing that I recommend, what we're going to start in the next video, is what I call the idea dump. Okay, the idea dump basically means you go in with everyone in a room or virtual in a remote setting, and you get everyone together and you just say, hey, what do you guys want to do? And you dump every idea onto a whiteboard, onto a document, which is what we're going to do here. And you just write every idea down, whether it's a good idea, whether it's a stupid idea, whether it conflicts with another idea, doesn't matter. You write everything down. And then after we get the idea dump out, then usually I'll meet with a smaller team, maybe just the head of the project or a development team, or maybe a couple heads of different departments, and or the chief, the C-level board or something like that. We'll meet with them, and then I'll go through and say, hey, well, we can't, if we do this idea, we can't also do this idea. They're conflicting. You can only do one or the other, or something, you know what I mean, for a technical reason or something. I can do this idea, but just FYI, this is going to be an extra 100 hours of work. Do you guys still want that? And so then I'll go through and do that phase. Once we get that out of the way, then I'll do like what I call a curated idea board, and that's basically my proposal for what we can accomplish based on all of those other factors. And then that usually goes into a scope of work, okay? And so then the scope of work is what actually gets approved. And that's basically the curated ideas. So that's saying these are the ideas that we have agreed to do, that I can accomplish. These are the time frames and so forth, like that. Now in this series, we're not going to do necessarily the time frames. That's why I'm kind of talking about it here, so you know. We're going to be, because it's just me working on this, we're going to move through the discovery phase relatively quickly. But I'm letting you know that it would not be unusual to spend 6 weeks, 8 weeks on a discovery phase for a large project. I was doing a large project that was like a $250,000 project, and I was working in the company. We were hiring an outside agency to do it, and so I was on kind of the other side of the table than I am now. It was a $250,000 project. It was a large web application, and we were paying up, $250,000, $250,000 is a lot of money. And with that project, we spent 8 weeks in discovery. 8 weeks. When you've got that much money on the line, you want to make sure that everything is down to a T. You've crossed your T's, dotted your I's. You want to make sure everything is perfect. That scope of work will go back and forth until everyone has agreed on everything. And it's okay. Like, you're going to go through a lot of discovery process, a lot of brainstorming. You're going to go through a lot of kind of negotiation, deciding what features to do and what features not to do. And that discovery phase can take a while. So just know that you can't really put a time frame on it. You might all click. I've seen this before where I've gotten discovery and it's just clicked, and we've been done in like a week. We've been done with discovery. And then I've seen times where it takes, there's a project I just finished where we were in discovery for about 6 weeks. It was about 6 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks we were in discovery, because truthfully, the company didn't really know what they wanted. They had a whole bunch of people that had different ideas about what they wanted. And so it took 6 weeks for the company to figure out what they wanted. Most of it wasn't even me. It was the company. They had to figure out what they wanted, and they really didn't know. They had a bunch of people with different ideas, and those people had to duke it out to figure out what worked, okay? And it worked out good in the end. The company was very happy. And at first, I think they were frustrated with the discovery phase. But after I said, I'm like, we got to make sure we get everything in order here. And after they went through the discovery phase, they told me, they're like, wow, we didn't know we were this confused about what we wanted. And we can see now why you didn't want to continue, because, until we went through that process, because it would have been impossible for you to deliver on our project. So they even saw the value in that. And that's exactly what it would have been. I wouldn't have been able to deliver on the project simply because it was the stuff they had just wasn't going to work. They had opposing views on different things. They had different views on the purpose of the website. They had different views even on, and they're probably watching this right now, so they know exactly what I'm talking about. They had different views on even like the value proposition of the company. Like what the sale, like one of the people thought they were doing a residential play, and the other person thought it was a commercial, play, because they do a little bit of, well, they do mainly commercial, so I don't know why they thought residential. But anyway, one guy wanted to make a website focused around the residential market, and it was a commercial play. So that I'm just saying, like, these are major concepts that, like, you can't build a website until you get that stuff figured out. And you'll be surprised going into it how many companies really don't have it fully understood what they want. And so your goal is to help them get through that process. So you're going to be kind of the leader here and help them walk through that process. All right. So that's what the that's what the discovery process is. That's phase one. It's super important that you go through this. We didn't do any work on this video right here. And I hope you guys found value in just learning about this phase and how you would control this if you're working. Regardless of what environment you're working in, you need to bring all the related involved parties together. You need to do an idea dump. And that's what we're going to be doing in the next episode. I'm going to do an idea dump for the website that we're working on, devmarketer.io. So we're going to dump all the ideas on the board about what we want out of this project, what I want to accomplish, and what I want the website to do. And then after that, we'll go back, and after the idea dump, then in a following episode, we'll go through and we're going to see which ideas work and which ones we can do and which ones we can't do, which ones will take too long. So maybe it's, set up for a future release and so forth. That's the last thing also, by the way. Sometimes if people have a certain time frame, sometimes companies will come to you and say, I need to get done by February. You're like, wow, that's not a lot of time. Well, so what I'll do in the discovery phase is I can say, okay, well, we can do all these things, but we can't do it by February. So let's highlight the main ones. Let's mark those for February release. And then we're going to go ahead and schedule a March release for these features, and then an April release for these features, okay? And it can work out really, really well. And in that case, obviously, you would have different payment cycles for each of those phases or whatever. But anyway, that's another way to make this work if they've got certain time frames. Okay, so it's really important to get that up front as well. All right, so hopefully you guys found this information valuable for you guys, and hopefully it can help you with your jobs. Hopefully you can take this to your employers and say, let's implement these ideas. The discovery phase is super important it's really what makes a good web developer into a great web developer. If you can hammer these ideas out ahead of time, it's going to make you look so much better in the long run. You're going to be way more organized. You're going to move way faster. You're going to have happier clients. You want to hash these ideas and these, maybe problems potentially up front instead of after the fact, okay? That's why it's so important to hit these things up right now instead of later on in the project. Everyone gets wiped out later on in a project, especially a project that goes on for 6 months or maybe 8 months, like a big project might easily. Everyone gets wiped out. Everyone gets frustrated later on. You want to hit it up while everyone's enthusiastic, get everyone on board, get everyone to agree on certain things. Like, it's so important that you do this early on. It's going to make you look like an all-star later on, okay? And this is honestly what makes a good developer into a great one. I promise you. You're going to go into your actual coding phase knowing exactly what to do. You have all the features set up. You've got the database exactly organized. You've got the design mockups. You've got the layouts approved. You're literally just coding what's already been decided at this point, and so it makes you just move so much faster. The marketing department's had a chance to write all of their catchy little lines. You've just got so much stuff worked out that when you go to code and develop the website, it's going to move through awesome. Like, it's just going to go through really beautifully and smooth. And that's what you want as a freelancer, as a developer, as a startup founder, whatever. That's what you want. Okay. So it's so important you take the extra time to do the discovery process now and also the design process after this before you jump into the code. It's completely natural that you may not jump into code for 2 months, 3 months while you plan the project. The planning is just so critical. And most people think I'm crazy until you've been through it. And then I promise everyone comes back and says, wow, if you actually do the discovery process, it runs so much smoother. Okay? That's all I got for you guys today. In the next episode, we're going to do the idea dump. So go ahead and stay tuned. Link in the description for the next video. I'll try to get it up here on screen as well. And you guys, I'll see you guys in the next episode where we do the idea dump and we talk about the features we want on our website.